Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for a treat as we have Frank Warren, the promoter of Tyson Fury. How are you, Frank?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Happy to have you. Thank you so much. I know this must be a very, very busy time and you're being pulled in many different directions. We appreciate you coming on the program. I just want to, I guess, get
No.
your take, man. Let us know how you see it live there and get to experience history.
Yeah, well, it certainly was historic. There's no doubt about that. It was an epic fight. You know, Tyson was came out dressed as a Spartan, and that's what it was. It was that type of performance. I mean, it was just amazing. But it took two guys to make that performance. You know, Deontay obviously played a huge part in it. I mean, I said before the fight, I was talking. You know, we was doing a few interviews, and I was asked how I felt the fight would go, and I just felt that the only way Deontay could win the fight, he'd have to come out and impose himself. And that's what he did. He came out in the first round throwing a lot of body shots, coming in low, obviously looking for Tyson to drop his hand so he could wing over one of those big punches of his. And he did it well. I thought Malik Scott, if that's the tactics they were working to, I thought Malik Scott did a good job. And Tyson, I'm always, when he's in the ring, I've seen him in the first fight against Deontay when he went down, especially in that last round. How he got up, I don't know, but you always feel with Tyson, he's such a strong guy that he's more than capable of recovering, and he has massive recuperative powers. And as we've seen in the two fights where there was four knockdowns between, he was knocked down four times in those two fights, but the fight was unbelievable. It was real edgy of seat stuff. Both guys, when Tyson was boxing behind his jab, he was brilliant, and then he threw caution to the wind. And it was, as I was saying before the fight, it will wind up being a shootout, and that's exactly what it was. And all these people who think Tyson Fury doesn't punch, they ask Deontay Wilder. He can punch. He's a 6'9" guy who moves sometimes like a middleweight in the ring, and he's just an amazing fighter. And that for me that's probably the best live heavyweight fight I've ever seen.
Frank, could you give me the origin story? Because obviously, we're fast forward to Tyson being probably the greatest heavyweight of this generation, but I want to know, how'd you discover him? How'd you end up with him? I do believe he was with Mick Hennessy at one point, right?
That's right. In the early days he was. And then his sort of career was faltering, nothing was happening. I met with him and his trainer and uncle at the time, Peter, and we did a deal. And within a couple of fights, I got him into the spot to be the mandatory challenger to fight Klitschko. He fought another guy that was with me at the time, which was Derek Chisora, and Chisora was coming off of I think it's about six really good wins against decent fighters, and I felt that Chisora would probably beat him, but that night he was unbelievable. He was moving from southpaw to left, to orthodox. He used every trick in the book, and he absolutely destroyed Derek Chisora. Derek never won 1 second of any round, and eventually he got pulled out. And I said to him immediately after the fight, I said, "You do that against Klitschko and you'll beat him." And that's exactly what he did. He went to Germany again in the other guy's backyard, went to the other guy's country, and I gave him a boxing lesson. He's got such unbelievable skills. When you think what he'd done with Klitschko, who was the heavyweight of his generation, I mean, Klitschko couldn't lay a glove on him. He's tactically so bright, so on the ball with it. And then obviously he's been out to the States now 3 times, trilogy with Deontay. I think he got robbed in the first fight, but but he never complained, no moaning. Second fight, done an absolute job on him, and again he stopped him again in the third fight. And that for me, fighters who go on the road and do that, that's something special. Everybody wants home advantage, and for a Brit, especially for a Brit, to go abroad and do that, it's I find it's amazing, and it's great testament to him and his confidence and self-belief. He'd fight anywhere. He would go anywhere. Nothing phases him. In the dressing room before the fight, he's singing, he's dancing. He's an amazing athlete, and yet you look at him and you never think so.
But how was that bond formed though? Because I remember when he decided to come back after the long layoff and ballooning up in weight, he was offered some contracts by a lot of people, but he decided to remain, or rather go back to Frank Warren. So obviously there has to be some sort of relationship, bond, friendship, something that you've done or earned, and we just would like the story.
Yeah, well, I think, what happened when he came back, he contacted me and we just sat down, and I liked him. I always liked him. He fought Chisora twice, and the first fight, after he won the fight, I said, well done, you really boxed well, and you did what you had to do. Chisora came in a little bit heavy for the fight, but he did what he had to do, Tyson. And I see him. Every time I spoke, we got on fairly well, not great friends. And then he fought, as I said, he fought Klitschko, and then he was supposed to do the rematch on my station, BoxNation. And what happened was he had basically fell out with his uncle, Peter, who trained him, and with Hennessy. He'd left them, and he asked me if I would get involved and look after him. That time he was 150 pounds over his fighting weight, and we just hit it off. I took him into the TV broadcaster who I've got a contract with here, and I said, I'm telling you, I want to do something with him. And they were sort of a bit hesitant, to be quite honest. And, we sat there and I said, he's going to come back, and he's going to come back stronger and better. And I promise you, he'll wind up being the best heavyweight of his generation. And they're words that I actually used in there. I remember saying it to them. And it weren't like a hype or, a selling job. It was the fact that I genuinely believed that. And Tyson said to me, yesterday we was talking, he said, what a journey we've been on. I said, listen, I'm a passenger. You're the guy who's taking us on the journey. All right, I've made a few of the fights, and we've felt I've made the right moves for you. But at the end of the day, what you do when you get in the ring, you've been amazing. And he is an amazing character. When you think where he came from, with the drug problem, the booze problem, suicidal thoughts, was really contemplating suicide, was at the depths of despair. That for me all showed in that fight on Saturday. The ups and downs of that fight, and his will to come back, his strong will to survive, to not be beaten by anything. That is Tyson. What you see on Saturday in that ring reflects Tyson Fury as a person and his life. Refuses to be beaten. He's a true fighter in more ways than one.
Frank, we had Lou DiBella on not too long ago, and he was discussing, Richard Comey and having decent fighters, and sometimes as a smaller promoter having to give over the rights of that fighter to a bigger promoter. Do you feel, in retrospect, you made the right decision because you and Fury are where you're at because of the merger with Top Rank? Or do you think you and Fury would have been here regardless of what direction you would have went?
Well, we would have been there regardless. But the thing is, I've known Bob for many, many years, and it was a decision, and it was a look. It wasn't about me and me being the guy to hang up, to say no, you can't get near him. I mean, Nassim Hamid was with me. We brought him to the States and done great business with it. I've done it with numerous fighters over the years. I started the Showbox series on Showtime out there when Jay Larkin was at Showtime. We did stacks of stuff, but there was such a great offer that came in from ESPN. How can I say to him, don't take that money? It is huge money. And, it's life-changing money. He's got a family, and it set him and his family up. They're secure for forever for probably 10 lifetimes. So that was the objective there. At the end of the day, we work very closely together. I'm hoping, and we believe, he'll be fighting here next year in the UK, which will be a great homecoming. As you know, the British fans over here, they love their heroes. They get behind the fights, and there'd be nothing for him to sell out, an 80, 90,000 seat stadium, especially after Saturday. I mean, he's on the front pages of the newspapers here, and I don't mean a little picture. The biggest selling newspaper in the country, the whole front page is Tyson Fury. It's just, and when I come through the airport, all people were doing was talking about it, saying well done to, can you say well done to Tyson, etc. He's probably now one of the most famous athletes on the planet, bar none. You think about it. He's conquered the States. The fans loved him in the venue. There was no British fans were allowed to travel because of the COVID restrictions, but that audience I thought was about 60-40 in favour of him, and they were Americans, and Deontay Wilder's an American. He's won over the fans, and at the end he got a massive ovation and a lot of love from the crowd. So he's an amazing character, and if you look at his record, he's only been active in the last 7 years for 2 of those years. 5 years he wasn't active.
No, he's definitely proven that he is this generation's best heavyweight. So you're saying that next year it'll be a homecoming fight. So what's changed from fight night till today? Because on fight night you were asked that question in the ring, and you didn't answer it the same way as today. Today you seem sure that he'll be doing a homecoming.
No, what I'm saying is that's what I said is that's what I'd like him to do. That's what I'd like to happen. So we're going to see. Look, the end of the day, the only person who's going to decide what happens is Tyson. He's the guy getting in the ring. He'll make the decision. But I'm hoping that he will come back here because the fans want to see him. They want to see him in London or Manchester, wherever he decides to fight. But the fact of the matter is, it will be his choice. But wherever he fights, it's going to be a full house.
So Frank, can you explain this WBC position granting Tyson 30 days to negotiate with Usyk, but it sounds like Eddie and AJ have activated their rematch clause for Usyk. So does the 30 days that you were granted to negotiate, is that null and void since the activation of the rematch clause?
Unless Joyce steps aside, then that's not going to happen. Only if Joshua steps aside, then it could happen. But who knows what he's going to do? If I was him, if I was advising Joshua, I wouldn't go straight back into an Usyk fight. I mean, he looked terrible in that fight to me. Could you imagine if Joshua would have been in with Deontay, let alone Tyson? He would never. He just would never take that pressure. So if he needs to rebuild and try and come back, and going back straight back into an Usyk fight, I think Usyk will stop him next time. And his trainer, Usyk's trainer, said through an interpreter that Usyk said through an interpreter that his trainer told him just to box him and not go for the knockout. He wobbled him in the early part of the fight, and the last round, if that had been another 20 seconds, he would have been out. The corner was swinging a towel round to throw him.
Mm-hmm. I see that.
For me, he doesn't. For me, they should leave it alone. But that's their business and not mine. They'll do whatever. And in the meantime, we will do what we've got to do. And the WBC will obviously make their final decision and say when his mandatory is due and who it's going to be against. In the meantime, Dillian White is fighting Wallin, however you want to pronounce it. And I don't think that's an easy fight for Dillian White, by the way. I think he'll have his hands full.
He will have his hands full. Actually, do you make predictions or do you stay neutral? Because I'm interested. I think.
No, I think Wallin has the beating of him.
Yeah. I was watching the Wallin fight this morning with Tyson, and I'm like, I don't think that, first of all, Dillian, I don't remember him fighting a southpaw. Secondly, I don't remember him fighting someone as active in terms of high output as Valine. Like, Valine was keeping that jab and even punching on the inside with Fury. He might have, it could be argued that he might have done a better job than Wilder, outside of those knockdown rounds for Wilder.
Well, look, he did well, but remember, Tyson he had a horrible cut, and it did hamper him. I mean, It was a very bad cut. And to be quite honest, I thought the referee may even have stopped it on the strength of the cut. But thankfully, he didn't do that, and Tyson got through it. But that can happen in boxing. You get a bad cut, it can hamper you, and it's how you deal with it. And Tyson did deal with it. But I do think I think your observations about that fight are quite true. He's got a good jab. He's a big guy. He's strong. And one thing about him, he's got balls. I mean, he tried in that fight. He really tried. He took the fight to Tyson. And remember, Dillian Whyte ain't, he ain't no Tyson Fury.
So we got a question from the public. Mr. Adore says, thanks for coming on the show, Frank, and wish you continued success. How many fights will it take before you can get David Avanese in a world title shot again?
Well, we're working on that. I'm really delighted he came on board with us. He had a spectacular win on TV here a couple of weeks ago. Excuse me, and he's come over, signed with us now. So we're working hard to hopefully make his dream come true. He'll get a world title shot. I'll make sure that happens.
And for Fury, you don't see him fighting until end of the first quarter?
Yeah, look, that was a tough fight. And I know he was out partying afterwards, but it was a tough fight. And and he's been training constantly for, all through the lockdown. And that your body sometimes needs a rest, and you need to take a little bit of a break. So, in my opinion, he should hold up until February or March.
If Valine isn't successful and White does win, do you think that fight is a fight that you and Bob can put together with White without having to be mandated or purse bid or ordered from the WBC?
Well, look, we either will or we won't. If they order it, and if Tyson wants to go through with that defence, then we'll do everything we can to make it happen. If not, if it goes to purse bids, then so be it.
But that's what I mean. Do you think that's a fight that can be negotiated without having to go those other routes?
Well, I would hope so. I hope the quicker we can get it done, if it is the case, and if Tyson decides he wants to defend against White, and he did say to me about a month ago when we was doing a press thing, he wanted to fight. He said he'd fight White at Christmas or December. So at that stage he had no problems with the fight. So if it is, then we just have to sit down and see where it takes us.
Beautiful. Now, Luis Ortiz has verbally put out an offer to Joyce, who you promote. I wanted to ask, have you gotten any conversations, any phone calls from maybe a Louis de Cubas Jr.?
We made an offer. We spoke. We made an offer, and I was told he didn't want to fight. So he needs to go and talk to his people, because we want to do that fight. If he wants to do that fight, tell him to get his guys to call me, get Louis to call me, or whoever, PBC, whoever it is, call me, and we'll make that fight in a heartbeat.
So when you said you made an offer, was it sent to Louis de Cubas? Because that's kind of his manager.
I have to find out. Off the top of my head, I don't know. It's in my office. It's done by the matchmaker. But 100%, there was offer. We were told there was no interest in the fight.
Would you say it was a respectable offer?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're saying there's no interest in the fight, that's as far as it goes. But let me just tell you something. You want to fight Tyson Fury, you want to get in the ring, then the gatekeepers to that are the guys in the number one position, who are the mandatories. Joe Joyce is in that position. And Joe has no problem in in doing that fight. No problem at all.
Right.
And for Ortiz, that's the best chance he's ever going to get himself into a good position.
And when we're talking about Daniel Dubois, how realistic is the Trevor Bryan fight? And do you have a timeline that you would like to put that together?
I've got a date in. In December, and we definitely want to do that fight. We've reached out to the WBA, and we're waiting for them to come back. And he's with Don King, as you know, and I think there's a lot of litigation going on with the WBA with both Manuel Char and with Bryan. But the way to make it work is just to fight one. I don't care which one of them or both of them fight Daniel Dubois. Again, he's in a really good position. We're strong in the heavyweight. In Queensberry, we've got Tyson. We work with the other two guys, with Joe and with Daniel. So we're in a real, with good quality heavyweights. So there's some great fights to be made. And as I say, from my perspective, all the ones you've mentioned, there is no problem with us putting those fights on. So if you feel like you guys want to pick up the phone to Don or wherever it may be and say, let's do it. We've been trying to make these fights, and these guys don't want to fight our guys.
Does a Robert Helenius make sense now, coming off of 2 back-to-back wins from Adam Kovnacki, for a Joe Joyce or a Daniel Dubois?
Yeah, I like that as well. I thought he'd done well, didn't he? He boxed extremely well. He done right. He done right, Robert. And that's not, again, that would be a good fight to make with one of the guys.
And would you do Helenius and Dubois for the December date that you have, or you think a Dubois Helenius needs more promotion, or maybe Helenius needs more time coming off the Adam fight?
I think that needs a bit more promotion. The fight I would like to make for Daniel is either he's the WBA number one, is with either Char, who's there, whatever belt he's got, I can't remember what it's called now, or against Bryan. That's the ones we want to make. That's why when we were told we could make the interim fight. That's why we made the interim fight. We didn't do it for any other reason. That's what we were told would happen. So I want to order that fight. Order it and let whoever. I don't care who promotes it. If we've got to go to purse bids, we go to purse bids. Let's just get it on.
Now, what about Andy Ruiz? Have you sent any offers for Andy and Joe Joyce? That seems like a fight that the public would like. Is that something you're interested in, since you haven't sent an offer?
I haven't spoken about him at all with anybody. That's not been a conversation. I haven't even spoken to Joe about that. So I'd have to speak to Joe first and see how he feels about that.
How do you feel about that?
I think Joe Joyce is a handful. He's a big guy. He's a tough guy. And I'll tell you what he's got. He's got plenty. He's got big balls. He's relentless. Keeps coming forward at you, coming towards you, and he'd fight anybody. I mean, he's a handful for anybody. A handful for anybody. He's got a great pedigree. Got robbed in the Olympics, as it's turned out now. They look like they're going to award him the gold medal now. Because of all the scandals in the Olympics, so he's a quality operator, Joe, and what I like about him, he's changed over the last couple of fights. He's now lost that weight. He was carrying a bit of weight on him, so he's got that weight off, and he's got a bit more speed now. So I'm pleased with that. But Joe. You look at his record. He's he didn't start off fighting a load of guys that you normally put fighters in with to sort of get them some experience. He went a little bit of a higher level, and he's done extremely well.
Absolutely. So I want to ask, with Tyson, who do you think stands the best chance? Obviously, you're his promoter. You think he's the greatest heavyweight, but what's his toughest fight now that the Wilder trilogy is done? Is there another tough fight out there?
Look, he's the guy to beat. Of course there's tough fights out there. And I'm sure there'll be some great fights to be made from him. I mean, he's never going to be complacent about anybody. But there are some great fights. I mean, look, even the fight now, although I don't think it's a tough fight for him, but even the fight now would sell in the UK, him against Joshua, that still would sell in the UK. And for me, there's only one winner, but that would sell in the UK still. There's...
I was just going to say, since Usyk's win, there are people suggesting, like I just had Steve Cunningham who faced Fury. He still thinks that the former cruiserweight champ Usyk can beat Fury. How do you see that matchup playing out?
Well, I've got to be honest with you with that fight. I think they're both guys got similar skills. Both got good hand speed. They got great footwork. Both of them got good boxing brains. Both got good jabs. Both of them got good trainers. Sugar Hill has done a really good job with Tyson, and I think Lomachenko's father has done a fantastic job with Usyk. The big difference is, though, Tyson is 6'9", and he's not going to do what Anthony Joshua did. He will not be on the back foot, and he will. I see him out jabbing him. I think he's just too big for him, and I would see him coming through that fight. Whereas Joshua did not for 1 second impose any of his physical attributes on Usyk. For me, I thought I said if Usyk's standing at the end of the fight, he'll get the decision because he'll just be standing at the end. He'd have outboxed him. What I was shocked at was the way he outboxed him, because I thought he'd be trying to get under his jab and work inside, but he was out jabbing, which was amazing. The smaller guy was out jabbing the bigger guy, and he for some reason, I can't say he didn't show up, but his tactics didn't change from round 1 to round 12. He done the same thing every round, whereas Usyk was using all, making the best of what of his attributes, and but that wouldn't be like that with Tyson. I think it would be a really good fight. They're a good quality fight because they're both quality champions. Usyk probably the standout cruiserweight of the last few years, and he's certainly done well since coming up. Certainly against Joshua. Again, another guy that goes into the other guy's backyard, not worried about the crowd. Those two guys, they're superb fighters, but I just feel that Tyson will be too big for him and too strong for him.
So my last one, obviously, with you now in business with David Avanesian, he's around number 6 in the WBO. Do you think with the relationship with Top Rank, he'll be able to get a fight with Crawford, or you think Crawford will be too tied up if he gets the win with Porter, seeking bigger and better things?
I was talking to Bob the weekend about it, and we'll see how it goes. But look, he's 33 now, David, and he's an exciting fighter. He's strong. He's very exciting, and you don't want to be waiting around too long for a world title fight. So, as I say, we have had a conversation, but we'll see where we go with it.
Well, Frank, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate your time every single time. So thank you for coming on, and keep doing what you do. If you have any social media that you want to give out, please do so, and we appreciate you.
And I appreciate you having me on the show. You look after yourselves.
Thank you, brother. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Promoter Frank Warren, promoter of Tyson Fury, David Avanesian, Daniel Dubois, Joyce, and others. That should be some good news for the boxing public there. The Luis Ortiz turning down the Joyce fight, that's going to be huge amongst the community.
Yo, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to hit the like, subscribe, and share. As always, if you want to support us to the next level, head over to the patreon.com/ThaBoxingVoice. We have tons of exclusive from Border Wars, Entitled, betting shows, the list goes on and on and on. But in addition to that, if you guys have questions for fighters, trainers, and promoters, this is where you can submit them. We will run out, get these questions answered, and put it back on the show just for you guys. Appreciate it. Peace.